Hello and welcome to Broken Entertainment, where today we're going to point out that nothing is safe and nothing is sacred in entertainment because they have to destroy everything. Now, a lot of it comes down to agenda and politics, but the key here is actually that most of our entertainment at this point is owned in large part to 3 or 4 companies. And it's heading that direction in the gaming industry as well, but I'm talking here primarily TV and movies. Most of our entertainment is owned by giant corporations now. The smaller companies, the people who did it purely for passion, those are going by the wayside at an increasing rate. Now, big companies have always had a hand in our entertainment, but a lot of stuff was smaller. It wasn't given the corporate attention that things are now. Now, everybody's trying to be the next great thing. Everybody's owned by somebody with $1 billion pocketbook. And Thomas the Tank Engine is no different. I would like to say that it is. And I almost didn't do this video because I try not to review things that my son really enjoys. But he likes all of Thomas. He likes Thomas the original series, he likes the series preceding or after that, and he likes the one we're going to talk about today. And if he's listening to this at some later point, sorry. I like Thomas as well. I grew up watching Thomas, and I enjoyed Thomas the Tank Engine, rewatching it with him. Both the old show and even the newer stuff up to this point. And then it's like so much entertainment that goes massively corporate, it's completely forgotten what it is. And I don't even mean like that from the perspective of like an oldie Olderson, who's like, oh, back in my day. No, it's nothing like the show used to be. And I don't even mean from the 1980s or the 90s. I'm talking about 2 years ago. It's totally forgotten its identity. It has forgotten its purpose. It has forgotten its meaning and its value as a show. And it is written by a bunch of people who do not care. They think that kids are stupid. They don't need to make quality entertainment for them. They're just going to throw out, low budget, barely edited stuff because they're kids. Thomas never treated children that way. Thomas was always, children are smart, children are able to sit down and watch something that isn't high action, that isn't just constantly changing, that isn't flashing bright colors. It's just steady story beats after steady story beats. Narrated originally in the UK by Ringo Starr. This is a UK product after all. And then by George Carlin, and then by many others in later seasons. And then eventually, I forget which season, but they switched it up so that it was no longer narrated. The trains talked all the time. I think Thomas did some narration for a while. And now all of that is gone, including the steady story beats, including taking its time, including treating children like they're smart. And it's gone from being aimed at age range basically like 3 to like 12 to like 3 and under. Because everything is a baby now. Everything acts like a baby, everything looks like a baby, and it's not done to push agenda, though it does have some agenda stuff in it, which we'll get to. It's done out of just pure corporatism. Okay? This is now owned by Mattel. Good news for the toys, right? Bad news for the show. Because they're trying to get to the lowest common denominator, they're trying to get the most audience, and they're not worried about what this show has been for 30 plus years. It's non-stop aired from the 1980s to the present day. And the funny thing is, the new show, Thomas All Engines Go, violates every rule. It literally does everything nobody wants. Okay? I mean, everything. We got characters being swapped out for different races and genders in trains, okay? They're trains. We've got a total reboot that throws out past canon. We've got the dumbing down of both the art style and the direction and the stories. And we've got completely forgetting its identity. It's really incredible how all of that can fall onto one show. I mean, I've never seen a show. Now, it doesn't anger me like Star Wars did or Star Trek Discovery, or where it's like a malicious murdering of what you enjoy. It's just so bad. And it's clearly done by people who either have never watched the show or don't care. Oh, we're making this for kids. Why do the trains need to follow logic? You know, that kind of attitude. So I'm going to start here. I want to show you the intro to the original Thomas Tank Engines and Friends as it aired in the United States. It started in the UK, came over to the United States. This is just the brief intro, but it shows you what this show started out looking like. Now, it looks a little postage stampy because it's old. Okay, give it a break. But one thing you'll notice is it's just soothing, nice music, right? It's not hyped up, hyper introductory music for kids. Another thing you'll notice is this original. Look, the camera's even shaking. This show was originally done by models. Eventually, the show translates to this CGI. It's fine. The episodes are still pretty good for the most part. It had several movies that were pretty good for the most part. You know, they have their downsides and their upsides. Still follow the same basic premise and a little more ramped up music and maybe a little bit more ramped up in the action category. But generally speaking, these were steady stories. Okay, you can sit your kid down, they can watch, they can learn something, and they can kind of be calmed down. Be soothed by something that is steady and relaxing and doesn't amp people up. And that's what it's always been. Okay? It's funny at times. It's really entertaining, at least for me and for a lot of kids and a lot of people. You know, this has a fandom dating back to the 80s who's very passionate about it, like a lot of things in entertainment that are being destroyed. So, the thing about this show is that it's been this way for a long time, and it had its specific audience, but it didn't have a corporate audience. It didn't have the biggest possible denominator. So, what does Mattel do? They dumb it down so far, you almost can't see it anymore. You know, this show, one of the great things about this show was, yeah, it was always kind of a moral lesson for children, right? But it was an entertaining way, and things didn't always work out. Sometimes engines made mistakes and stuff got really messed up. And, you know, over time that kind of came around too, and then they fix everything, right? There's one episode early on in the original show where one of the engines doesn't want to go out in the rain because he doesn't want his paint to be messed up, so he hides in a tunnel and they wall him off. And they just leave him there for like 3 episodes. You know, that kind of darker 1980s kind of thing, you know. And actually that was from the original books from the 40s, so that was really more of a 1940s kind of thing. But it was just funny because they wall him up and they just leave him like, fine, you're not gonna leave your tunnel, here you go. It eventually comes out, it's fine. But you know, they back up on that over time. One of the great things about it for me as a kid and now, and watching my son who really likes trains watch this show, was that You actually learn about trains. Not intentionally, it's not an educational video about trains, but the trains were always followed very logical things. They were, the original author of the books wanted everything to be as realistic as possible. All the original characters were based on real train engines from around the world. Some of the railways are based on real railways in Britain. The trains did train things. Okay? If you wanted to turn around, you had to find a place to turn around. If you wanted to hook up to coaches, you had to wait for the guy inside the train to get out and use his tools to hook up the coaches and get back in. If you wanted to go a long distance, you needed to load up on coal and water, so on and so forth. Thomas couldn't necessarily go everywhere without making stops because he's a small engine. He doesn't have a lot of coal. He doesn't have a big water tank. This stuff is consistent until now. And now it's animated, which is fine. Animation's fine. Look, would I like it to all be in models? Sure. I like that look. It was expensive and increasingly expensive over time. I understand why they switched to CGI. I understand even going to animation does not bother me. Some of my favorite shows are animated. It's fine. The problem is that when they switched to animation, they also decided to make everything into Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes, don't get me wrong, has its place. But its place is not in Thomas. It's just not. So, I want to show you. This is the thumbnail. This is all engines go. I can't show you clips because they're very strict on allowing this to be shown. I don't know why, but they are. Now, Thomas always had some friends, some specific friends. He had some close friends, and he had like people, right? He had close friends. He had a wider group of friends outside of that, and then a wider group of friends outside of that. And so you had characters that were on it all the time, you had characters that were on it sometimes, and you had characters that were on it occasionally. And that held true with specific characters well into the CGI series. Now, they eventually swapped out, I believe it was Henry and Edward. Could be James and Edward. I get those two confused sometimes. Anyway, they took them out of the show and they replaced them with Nia, who is this character right here, and another one. And I have no problem with Nia. I've seen some people complain about Nia because she's not done exceptionally well after the movie that introduces her, and that's true, she's not. Because they kind of hammer home for like 4 episodes that she's from Africa, and you're like, yeah, I remember. I have memory. I remember the movie that I watched where Thomas went to Africa and found Nia, who was homeless, and she went home with him. I remember that. You don't have to remind me every episode that she's in, that she's from Africa. Then you had Gordon, and you had Toby, and you had Diesel 10, and you had Diesel, and Percy, of course. Now, in the new show, they've kept Percy. They've kept Diesel. Diesel 10 I haven't seen yet. He could make an appearance later on. Don't know. James and Edward are gone. Henry is gone, as far as I can tell. Victor, who worked at the Steamworks, who repaired all the trains. Victor and Kevin, which was his crane. Those two vanished. They've been replaced by a female character. Does both jobs. That's what I'm talking about. It's not even malicious agenda. It's just like casual, lazy agenda. Like, why are you replacing beloved characters with and the crane character they've introduced? Not objectionable, other than the fact that it's in All Engines Go and acts like everything else in All Engines Go, which acts like a toddler. The problem with bringing those characters in is that they're replacing characters that have been around since the 1940s. Why can't you bring in another crane? Why can't you bring in Nia and keep the other characters? There's nothing wrong with Nia. And this new train right here, I don't know her name, and I don't really care. Why do you have to get rid of these characters that have been long established and long loved and replace them with these new characters? Because you don't want your old audience. Just like Star Wars, just like Star Trek, only not done maliciously, just done out of corporatism, lazy corporatism. They rebooted this. They threw out 75 years worth of canon so that they could bring in a new audience of toddlers. That's why. But you can always bring in a new audience of toddlers. New audiences of children and toddlers have come up since the show's been on. That's how shows work. Popular shows that have been on for a long time, new people see it when they're young, and they get attached to it and they watch it. The formula worked for 75 years. And you've changed it because you're a lazy corporatist. And you've thrown away valuable characters with years and years of story and emotional attachment for people. You've thrown them away for no reason. Does this sound familiar yet? Have you heard this yet on everything else you've liked? How many things have gone completely by the wayside? How many shows and movies have we lost because they wanted to reboot things? Because we want to put in our own characters or our own spin, and we're too lazy to figure out how to do that with the original show, so we're just going to throw everything out the window and start over with our new stuff. I don't think I have to name the victims anymore. But Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Terminator, Alien versus Predator more than Alien versus Predator, so on and so forth. It goes on and on. This show is lazy. It's not offensive in the sense of a lot of the other stuff. It's just lazy writing. It's uninteresting stories. The trains no longer follow train physics. They're jumping tracks. They're doing cartoony things where they something's coming at them and they're trying to avoid hitting it instead of stopping or finding an emergency switch off. They just stretch their legs out really tall. And their legs, by the way, not wheels. They just stand up really tall and things go under them. These are not even trains anymore. They're just train-shaped characters for a cartoon. When they need to switch tracks and go another way, they just flip. They'll just jump off the track, land on the next track facing the other direction. So the whole identity of this show, of being steady-paced, of being relaxing, of showing you real trains in a real train world, as far as talking trains can be, right? Being realistic, having to follow the laws of physics, having to follow the laws of trains, all that's gone out the window. Even Sir Topham Hatt is barely in this show, who was in it all the time as the father figure for all the trains. Gone. More or less. I think I've seen him in one episode. Fortunately, I've put on older episodes. And by older, I mean 2 years ago. I'm not going all the way back to the 80s all the time. I do occasionally. For him to watch. Because I want him to see this show the way it used to be. And if he wants to watch it the way it is now, fine. Amazing to me that this has happened. But it shouldn't be. Because it's owned by Mattel. And what has happened to all of our entertainment every time it gets bought? What has happened to all of our entertainment when it gets bought out? This is what happens. It gets dumbed down. Loses its identity. It becomes a generic blob. And why? Because it's easy. Because they think it sells to the most amount of people. Maybe it does. I don't know. But it loses its soul in the process. It's because Disney, Mattel, you name the company, they don't have creative souls anymore. They used to. Disney used to have a creative soul. But they've lost that in search of, I don't know what. Bigger profits? I don't know. It sucks. It's unfortunate. The good news is that we do have the old stuff. You can go buy it. Please do if you're a Thomas fan. Preserve what used to be, what these shows and movies used to be. Because yes, we should absolutely, those of us who are creators should get out and create new things. Those of us who are not should go out and support the people who do. So you buy the original stuff and you can have it. You hold on to it. And you don't rely on them to still let you see it. And then you can preserve what these things used to be. But this show is not Thomas. The characters don't act like the characters. The trains don't even do what, Thomas used to pull Annie and Clarabelle all the time on the branch line. I've barely seen him do that. Percy used to be pulling the mail train all the time. I barely see him do that. They just kind of do whatever random goofy thing they're doing that day. And then they jump tracks and they flip around. They roll on the land, okay? I've seen them get in on dirt and move. It's not Thomas. There's a dozen other train shows out there that are more like Thomas at this point than Thomas. And there are cartoons too. Chuggington, TT Po, just to name a couple. There's another one that's coming to mind, but I can't remember his name. They're more like Thomas than Thomas because the trains have to follow train things. They have to act like trains. And they act like their characters. They act like the way they were written. And it's kind of this lazy approach that DC did with comics when they did the New 52. They said, well, nobody new is going to be able to go back and see all this canon. They don't want to mess with that. So we need to start over so that new people can come in. Well, the problem with starting over is that eventually you build stuff up anyway. And it's just a lazy way. It's assuming your customers are stupid. Look, you might get into comics and know nothing about comics, just using comics as an example. I know I did. I didn't know anything about the heroes outside of old shows and movies. But you can go read up on it. Or you can just say, you know what, I'm just going to start from here. And then when I have conversations with other fans, they can fill me in. You don't have to go back and have this mythological ambush of 75 years worth of canon, right? And Thomas canon is not complicated. But that's the approach they did. Let's cut out all of the past, rewrite most of the stuff, put in our own characters because we don't understand the other ones, or because they're not the right gender for a train. And on that point, there's a lot of female trains in Thomas, going all the way back. Random inserts of new characters overriding old characters for gender was wildly unnecessary. But it's modern day, so that's what they did. But yeah, the diversity in Thomas has actually been there since forever. And as far as Nia goes, she's fine. She just didn't need to replace anybody. It was weird that they did that, but like I said, but welcome to corporate entertainment. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you like the video, please hit the like button, and I will see you next time.